Good evening, America, and welcome to your Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you from Washington, D.C. Yes, another busy day in the nation's capital. Tens of thousands of people arrived here for a March for Israel, supporting our great ally in the Middle East. It was a peaceful event with lots of speeches from religious leaders, entertainment stars, and elected officials, including the House Speaker. Meanwhile, there is preparations underway for some of the star witnesses in the Biden impeachment inquiry to start giving interviews. Rob Walker, former associate of Hunter Biden, is the first to be interviewed right after Thanksgiving. We're going to have more on that later in the show. But also big events inside the Capitol tonight. The House Speaker is going to try to get his temporary spending bill passed so that lawmakers can disappear for the holidays, come back, get the spending bills passed, and try to get to a position where we start to cut the size of government. We'll see how that works out tonight. But Speaker Mike Johnson has some big history on the line tonight. We'll see how that plays out. Now, before we turn to anything else, I want to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She has a lot of other headlines she's been keeping an eye on for us. Amanda, what's on your radar today?
Good evening, John. Yeah, I want to start off by piggybacking on that news that's taking place in Washington, D.C. Just last night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a very dire warning to the U.S. that we may be next if the IDF doesn't win their battle against Hamas. This, of course, isn't settling news, especially as FBI Director Christopher Wray has continued and repeatedly warned the public and Congress about a potential attack in the wake of Hamas's attack on Israel. And meanwhile, some drama unfolding up on Capitol Hill between lawmakers and their witnesses. Tennessee Republican Tim Burchett, who voted to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy just the other month, was reportedly elbowed by the former speaker and then chased him down in the hallway to confront him. And then just an hour or two later, over in the upper chamber during a Senate Help Committee hearing, Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma tried to fight labor leader Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters after reading his tweets where O'Brien said he'd take the senator at, quote, any time in any place, unquote. Now, while it's getting rowdy up on Capitol Hill, we're going to have that video to show everyone later in the hour. I feel like we shouldn't be talking about this, though, because you know the first rule of Fight Club. But anyway, finally, the surge in illegal immigration hasn't just been a national security issue, it's soon becoming a financial one for our nation as well. A new House GOP report has found that illegal immigration could cost U.S. taxpayers up to $451 billion with a B dollars per year. And John, that's an insane dollar amount, all during a time when the American people want taxes lowered and they want fiscal responsibility restored in the swamp. So we'll see what happens up on Capitol Hill with the new speaker tonight. You know what I say, though, if you don't get it done before the holidays, you stick around for the holidays, you don't get a vacation.
That's probably the motivating factor. Well, they'll pass it tonight. It's not about cutting the government yet. They're still delayed on getting that done. And who thought that the marble asylum that is the Capitol would become an octagon, a fighting ring today? But it certainly felt like that way for a couple hours.
When you got Bernie Sanders refereeing, you know things have gone off the rails.
It was quite a moment. It really was. Well, Amanda, we have the perfect first guest today because for years he has sounded the alarm on the border. He has sounded the alarm on our nation's security, and particularly how Joe Biden has put it at risk with the open border policies. Ken Cuccinelli is a former Attorney General of my home state of Virginia and has continued his honorable service in the last administration for President Trump as acting Deputy Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, and he joins us right now. Ken, great to have you on, sir.
John, Amanda, good to be with you both.
When I saw this report in the last 24 hours, this extraordinary total, $450+ billion a year in toll to the American taxpayers because of what Joe Biden's done at the border, it doesn't surprise anyone who has followed your work. You have been warning about this for so long. How did we get to this point?
Yeah, and for a fraction of this money, we could stop it.
Right.
But it requires political will. We got to this point because Joe Biden ran on an open borders policy, and he has implemented an open borders policy. And Amanda, I think you mentioned, this isn't just an immigration issue, it's also a national security issue emphasized by Bibi Netanyahu recently. And terrorists can walk in, Chinese spies can walk in, MS-13 members can walk in, anybody can walk into the United States thanks to Joe Biden and Secretary Mayorkas. And this is something that can be stopped. I think the way to stop it has been proposed by Governor DeSantis, and that's put the military on the border. Even as we were building wall in the last administration, people were still coming through. Until you completely seal that border, and we can do it for a heck of a lot less than $450 billion a year, we're going to continue to suffer from these threats.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and I think that Republicans at the beginning of Joe Biden's term were trying to decide between a carrot and a stick mode of operating with him, especially with respect to the border. But it seems like we are at the place where there's got to be some sense of urgency, and there's got to be some sense of punishment for people who don't do their jobs, particularly Secretary Mayorkas. I think that this is probably the most low-hanging fruit as far as impeachment proceedings in the House. But you had 8 Republicans who voted with Democrats to not make this happen. What is the reason?
Yeah, so first of all, looking ahead a little bit, if you can't move forward on an impeachment of Mayorkas, forget about impeaching Biden. That's one message. But Mayorkas has lied to Congress so many times. He is intentionally, it isn't to say he's failed to do his job. He views his job as keeping the border open, not closed. And that is not the legal definition of a secure border. And he keeps lying about that to Congress. I don't know how many lies it takes for congressmen and women to vote to impeach him and to remove him from his office, with the goal being that even though Joe Biden is president, that the message would be sent, you need to send somebody here who will actually try to secure our border instead of opening it to every terrorist, spy organization, and illegal invader that wants to come to America.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. There's another extraordinary conversation going on, and I think it's one that's catching fire. In Congress, there are a larger number of Republicans now saying it's time to empower states to enforce federal immigration law when the federal government won't do it. You tried this in Virginia. There was some efforts in Prince William County. Others, it had some success. What do you think about that? And is it extraordinary that we have to ask the states to do the federal government's job?
It is extraordinary, but the states have been left with some power to do this. We saw this with Governor DeSantis taking people to Martha's Vineyard, Governor Abbott busing illegals, not so much to secure the border with those efforts as to raise the awareness. And then this year, finally, after years of some of us candidly nagging Governor Abbott to do it, they have started to secure the border themselves. States have the authority to do this under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. When a state is invaded, they can repel that invasion, and they don't need anybody's permission to do it. Greg Abbott resisted doing this for a long time, even though other governors like Nome and DeSantis and others offered troops, money, and assets to do it. And now Texas is finally fighting with the Biden administration, actually, to close their border across Mexico. States can do this. It is entirely reasonable when they do for the federal government to reimburse them for that effort. It is expensive by state budget standards, not by federal budget standards. So this is heartening to finally see.
Yeah, all ideas you've been advocating for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ken, we have just rounded off fiscal year 2023, and we hit another record, 169 individuals encountered at the border who are on the terror watch list. That was a new record from 98 the previous year, and more than the previous 6 years, fiscal years combined. As you see folks like FBI Director Christopher Wray up on Capitol Hill talking about how the terror threat is something that we haven't seen since ISIS, and we know the thousands and thousands of special interest illegal aliens coming across our border. Joe Biden's got a year left to squeeze out without a terror attack. Do you think he makes it out without one?
Perhaps. Let's look at Hamas. They got control of Gaza in 2007, and they built and prepared for 16 years. These are folks who have a very long view. They do not have the American view of, I want it yesterday. They are very strategic. They're evil, but they're not stupid. And that open border is an open invitation to terrorists to come in here, both who will act themselves, who will recruit others, who will facilitate others to carry out acts of terrorism, and to grow communities where terrorism flourishes within the United States. All of those things are happening under Joe Biden with an open border. It has to be closed. It'll take years to get wall. We need the military to close it right now. Joe Biden is not going to do that. That isn't really going to happen until we get a president who's committed to using the military at the border. Obviously, that will not be Joe Biden. And it won't be until January of 2025. I don't know. It is hard to predict, Amanda, whether there'll be an attack between now and then. But it is mathematically, it seems near certain to me that we will suffer terrorist attacks, plural, because of the people that Joe Biden and Secretary Mayorkas have led into this country. And then I wonder how those 8 Republicans who voted against impeaching Mayorkas are going to feel when we trace back terror attacks. It's apparently murder and rape and pillaging across our own country. Mere crime isn't enough to get them upset with Mayorkas intentionally opening our border, but perhaps terrorism will do it. Who knows?
Yeah, it's sad that it has to come to that point to do the basics of security in this country, but it seems to be that way. I want to turn for a second to an issue that I think is ancillarily related, and I think a lot of people look at it and say, what's going on? The United Nations could not condemn the attack on Hamas. It could not get enough votes to condemn the attack on Hamas, though it condemns the United States and Israel regularly. Have we gotten to the point where enough people in this country say, why are we funding this organization? Let's pull that funding. Do you think Republicans are growing that? Maybe some Democrats now, too?
Yes, I think we are. When you can't condemn terrorism, that's not a... It's one thing if some recalcitrant left-winger on the street doesn't want to condemn terrorist attacks. Right. It's quite another if a governmental organization that's supposed to facilitate peace won't condemn terrorism. I think it's time to cut the U.S. funding to the United Nations. Again, this is something Governor DeSantis has also echoed, ironically, with one of his competitors having argued for UN funding when she was there as an ambassador. But I think the people of the United States are beyond sick of the United Nations. Iran is judging human rights at the UN, condemn terrorism. How much more do we need? I think that's an easy budget cut.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Ken, I want to round off the conversation with a different form of terrorism that also involves the border, fentanyl. We've got President Biden heading to my state here, San Francisco, to meet with President Xi. Do you expect him to apply any type of aggressive pressure on China as far as the production and export of chemicals that contribute to fentanyl and the chemical poisoning of Americans through the southern border?
I do not. Joe Biden doesn't have it in him to be aggressive with Xi. And you can speculate as to the reasons, but certainly that would be a radical change from his first 3 years in office. And I don't see that happening. Although congratulations, you finally have a clean city for once.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Wish we could keep Xi here.
I think some San Franciscans are going to ask the president to stay.
You need a communist tyrant to come get your city cleaned up. That should tell us something about San Francisco.
It's so fitting for the California Democratic Party, isn't it, Ken? Sir, you have been fighting for years for all the common sense solutions, and I think people are waking up to all the reality you were telling us a long time ago. Great to have you on. Thanks for joining us tonight.
John, Amanda, good to be with you.
Yeah, it's a great honor to have you. All right, folks, stick around. When we come back, Jason Foster, the Empower Oversight Center, that's the whistleblower center that represented the IRS and FBI whistleblowers. He's going to tell us how so much of what the
Welcome back, everybody. If you peruse justthenews.com, which I recommend that you do, you would have seen John's story regarding information that came out from House Judiciary hearing, closed-door testimony by Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who is the latest top-ranking witness to confirm in his testimony the veracity and consistency of that IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley, in the Hunter Biden tax case. Jason Foster is the founder of the Empower Oversight organization that's dedicated to enhancing independent oversight of government and corporate wrongdoing by helping insiders safely report waste, fraud, and abuse. It is thankless work, but we are so grateful for his counsel to so many heroic and brave whistleblowers out there who have come forward. Jason, it's a pleasure to have you back on. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So for all of the bluster coming from Democrats regarding Gary Shapley and his testimony besmirching his reputation, it seems that Even David Weiss can confirm numerous things that Gary Shapley said in his testimony. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised at all because, we knew from the beginning that that it would take time, but when the facts came out that Gary would be vindicated because, he had the documents. He took contemporaneous notes during the meeting. He sent a contemporaneous email to his boss, who was also in the meeting, who did not object to his characterization. A lot of people, the Justice Department is trying to sort of split hairs on this, that, or the other detail and, sort of confuse the public. But they're really slicing the bologna really thin. I mean, they're essentially confirming everything important that Gary said, while trying to quibble with sort of the conclusions from that. So, for example, Mr. Weiss confirms in his most recent closed-door testimony that in February of 2022, he did ask for special charging authority. Now, there's a distinction between special attorney authority and special counsel authority, which is really in the legal weeds of people. It doesn't really matter. Bottom line is he asked for special authority in February of 2022 for the ability to charge outside his District of Delaware, which he would have to do in order to bring a case in the District of Columbia for the 2014 and 2015 tax years for evasion of taxes on the Burisma income. Mr. Jordan came out and described that sequence of events as being a denial, that he asked for it and he didn't get it. So he was denied at the time when it mattered, before the statute of limitations on those charges ran out. And, Mr. Weiss quibbles with that and says, well, it wasn't a denial. They didn't say no, but they didn't say yes either. So the bottom line was he didn't have the authority after he asked for it, and he didn't have it when he needed it to charge, those key charges before the statute of limitations expired. So, and what's really important is, we also learned from this testimony, he had monthly meetings with Brad Weinsheimer, the most senior person in the Deputy Attorney General's office, Lisa Monaco's office, and he asked with Weinsheimer and John Carlin, another senior political appointee, for this authority when he needed it, and they didn't say yes. What they said was, you need to follow the process, which is exactly what's in Gary's notes. Yeah. And what did they? And they spent a lot of time, sort of quibbling with the congressional staff about what that means. Follow the process, and a lot of people can get confused in the details. But what it means is, we want you to go and ask for cooperation from the Biden-appointed U.S. attorney in D.C. That's what follow the process means. Every time they say follow the process, they mean follow the normal process. Well, the whole point of Attorney General Garland's testimony to Congress was that he assured Congress that the normal process wouldn't be followed, that Biden appointees would not be interfering with this investigation because of the obvious conflict of interest, that they were, it's the President of the United States' son, and he's the head of the government, and they owe their jobs to him. And so obviously Biden appointees shouldn't be involved. And he assured Congress and the Senate, well, Mr. Weiss is a Trump appointee, so you don't have to worry about that. But when the rubber met the road, what did they say? They said, no, you're not going to get we're not going to give you this special authority. We want you to go and go hat in hand to the District of Columbia, D.C. U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves, who's a political appointee of the subject's father. That is what that's what caused him to blow the whistle. It was that conflict of interest, that inherent conflict of interest. And that's what he objected to in the October 7th meeting to Weiss's face that day. And all of that has borne out to be true. It's interesting to go back and read some of the articles now where they say, well, there's no evidence that it was presented to D.C. Oh, there's no evidence it was presented to California. Well, those articles look ridiculous now.
They do. The entire news media, with the exception of a few people, look pretty ridiculous. But once again, the media's tried to rush to judgment to protect Joe Biden, even when the evidence and the facts would suggest otherwise. That's what makes what you do, Jason, and what these amazing whistleblowers, Joe Ziegler and your client, Gary Shapley, it's so important. Why what they did. They changed the course of history, there's no doubt. I want to flip to something else, because you yourself find yourself in the news. It wasn't that long ago that you revealed to us that you had gotten notification 6 years after the fact that you had been the target of a subpoena. The Justice Department you were investigating as a Senate investigator for Chuck Grassley, snooping into your personal emails while you were investigating them for wrongdoing. Have you learned anything new since you got that first notification?
Yes. So I have been in contact with lawyers representing Google, and they have. I've been asking them a whole series of questions and asking for documents from them, and they've provided me the notifications that they got from the court, signed by magistrate judges, for that for 5 of that 6 years. So there's the initial request that these are non-disclosure orders. These are orders from the court that says to Google, you're not allowed to tell Jason or anybody else, any of his Democrat and Republican colleagues whose information, whose phone records and text records you saw, you're not allowed to tell them that we subpoenaed those records or that you gave them up. That was in the initial request. It was for a 1-year time frame, and then they renewed it every year in September or August of every year for the next 5 years.
Unbelievable.
So which raises the question, the thing that they were ostensibly investigating, I believe, from the circumstances, was the leak of the Carter Page FISA application before it had been declassified and made public. It was reported in some press in April of 2017. And they seem to have been going after every congressional staffer or member of Congress who had access to that from the Justice Department, without any belief, without any other basis that they had leaked it. So the question is, they charged the head of Senate security, the head of security for the Senate Intel Committee, with lying about his relationship with a reporter, and he pled guilty in 2018. So why, after that occurred, which appears to be related to this investigation, why after that occurred would they still be trying to keep the order for my records and my other Democrat and Republican colleagues' records secret after the case is already over? Yeah. That's the question that I am urging authorities on the Hill and the Inspector General to look into now, because I have copies of these orders. I know what the timing was. It was in both administrations. It was it was during the Trump administration and during the Biden administration, where they asked for renewals for give us another year, Google, before you tell your customer that we got their records. And there cannot be, and the basis that they cite, the standard under the statute is, that the records might be destroyed if you let the person know. Well, they already had my records from 2017. Google gave them the records. So there's no way in 2020 I could have destroyed them. And you weren't even working for Congress then, right? You couldn't have any records. You're out of Congress. No, exactly. And they already had my records. So it seems, so there's no, I don't believe there can possibly be any factual basis that they gave to the court that would suggest that me or any of the other recipient, any of the other people's records who were taken had any ability to destroy anything, or there was no legitimate reason to keep it secret. I think they just wanted to hide the broad nature of the dragnet for communications from senators' staff and congressmen's staff. Mm-hmm.
Right. And Jason, there's a fundamental constitutional issue here where you have a government spying on citizens, on individuals, whether it's a Senate investigator, whether it's Joe Blow in the Central Valley of California. Jason, I know that your organization, the people you represent, understand the repercussions of something like this, but I constantly hear from people who don't seem to care about the Constitution, I suppose, who say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter if the government spies on you. Please, in about 45 seconds, explain to our audience how to combat that type of idiocy.
Well, I mean, I used to think that way. I have learned over the years that, there are circumstances people get, there are abuses. There's potential for abuse by the people who aren't held accountable enough. I mean, the assistant U.S. attorneys who signed off on this, who are making representations to the court that aren't true, there's no real oversight of it. It's boilerplate language. These judges and clerks just sign off on it, and there's no real oversight. And when Congress, and obviously when Congress asks questions about it, you can't get them. So, I mean, the problem is that, there isn't accountability and oversight. And here the constitutional issue is there's a fundamental separation of powers issue. If they can dig up, if they can try to dig up, if they can just instill fear in people who are supposed to be doing oversight of them, then they're going to self-censor and they're not going to be as aggressive on behalf of the American people as they might otherwise be. They don't want to pick a fight with someone who might have something that they could leak to the press that would be embarrassing about them. Yeah. Jason, we just got 30 seconds. You were talking to whistleblowers when you were in the Senate. Whistleblowers have to be chilled knowing that your communications were being monitored when you were trying to investigate. What's the consequence? Got about 30 seconds left. Yes, well, I mean, obviously that's a huge concern beyond just the constitutional speech or debate privilege issues and attorney-client privilege issues. I mean, I was also an attorney representing the committee,
Right.
but yeah, there are whistleblower issues as well. I mean, obviously, I had communications, with lots of FBI whistleblowers in other agencies, and sometimes the best protection for a whistleblower is anonymity. Well, if they're watching my phone records and they know who I'm talking to and they can guess or figure out who I'm talking to, that's going to chill whistleblowers from talking to me.
Yeah, amazing.
Jason, you have provided counsel and protection to so many people who have a lot to say, and we appreciate that. It is a duty to the American people, and we are blessed by it. Thank you so much for being here. All right, everybody, we've got to take a very quick commercial break, but we've got much more news and guests coming up on the other side.
Welcome back, America. There have been so many developments on the clean energy and energy front over the last couple of weeks. We thought it'd be a good time to dig in and help you out understand some of them. Warnings about the U.S. power grid facing a higher risk of blackout this winter. That just came out recently. And California, that Nirvana where they started the Green New Deal, it's giving back its solar and wind energy because it doesn't have transmission lines to actually send it to the customers. How about that for a headline? Well, our next guest, he knows all about this. Jason Isaac serves as the CEO of the American Energy Institute. He is one of the country's greatest energy experts. Jason, great to have you back on the show.
John, Amanda, great to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Many times you and others have come on the show saying, the Democrats have put the cart before the horse. In fact, the horse is so far behind it's going to crash into the cart. Some of those moments are occurring now. We're starting to see that the grid can't handle what Joe Biden has set in motion. And even Gavin Newsom has to now turn away all that solar and wind energy he paid billions for. What's going on? Is the reality of the Green New Deal setting in?
Yeah, it really is, and the costs are astronomical. And I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, we'll just build batteries to make this work." Like batteries, like an EV. Well, it's interesting. You look at the entire installed capacity of batteries in the U.S. right now would keep the lights on in the United States for 2 minutes. The last time I checked, winter storms were measured in days, not in minutes, certainly not in hours. But you keep the lights on for 2 minutes at an astronomical cost of over $400 a kilowatt hour, when the cost of coal-generated electricity, 3 cents. 3 cents compared to $400. And California is steering everyone, the people that aren't leaving or being forced out of their state are steering down this path of $400 per kilowatt hour of electricity. It's astronomical.
It's crazy.
It's just an incredible waste. I wanted to ask you, though, we are getting to that phase of November where everybody's ramping up, getting ready for Thanksgiving. People are concerned about energy prices. They got to cook a turkey for hours and hours in their oven. But more so than that, just having electricity. And the NERC conducted a study that found that I think half of North America and nearly 2/3 of the United States could be facing potential brownouts and blackouts heading into winter. How big of a concern is this? And are there areas and regions of the country that need to be more concerned?
I would say the entire country should be concerned. This parasite of wind and solar is exactly what it is. It's a parasite to our grid. And as it gets in and grows in a grid, the grid becomes more infected and less reliable. That's what we saw in Texas 3 years ago when 30% of our grid was unreliable, weather-dependent variable generation. Today, that number is over 40% in Texas. You're seeing that across the country, and cost are skyrocketing in places like California. They're up 25% over the last 3 years. In Texas alone, places that aren't embracing renewables aren't seeing as near the high prices that we're seeing here in Texas. And their unreliability isn't like they are in places like California that have embraced this weather-dependent, what they think is this panacea to stop the earth from turning and the climate from changing. And it is unfortunately very expensive to the ratepayers and to businesses. And that's why businesses are leaving the state of California. That's why they're leaving, unfortunately, some cases are leaving this country to go to places where they can get cheap energy.
It's insane. It's just insane. You mentioned earlier the temptation. Let's just battery up. Let's get a lot more batteries. We have several problems. One is we don't have the lithium and other rare earth minerals. China has that, so let's play into China's hand with that. But there's another problem. I remember when Democrats used to worry about Superfund sites and liberals were like, but with all of these batteries, there's going to be a massive Superfund site called America where we're going to have all these leftover batteries, no way to recycle them or dispose of them. The Illinois Electric Vehicle Coordinator, he admitted as much about a week ago. That's a pretty big moment, that people coming to grips with the pollution of the EV revolution.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And 100% of the graphite that goes in electric vehicles comes from China. It is refined in China. Over 80% of the cobalt that makes electronics, particularly electric vehicles, possible, comes from the Congo, and it comes from Chinese owned and controlled mines. People that could care less about the environment. I'm so glad that Newsom's cleaning up California in anticipation of his boss, Xi Jinping. But it would be nice if China actually cared about the environment. Just in the last couple of weeks have released unprecedented research that talks about the cost of electric vehicles. And if an EV owner was truly paying for the cost to charge their vehicle, they'd be paying an equivalent of over $17 per gallon. But you and I, the people that don't drive electric vehicles, are subsidizing those costs massively with the cost of electricity, ratepayers, taxpayers, and subsidies for electric vehicles. Even when we purchase an internal combustion engine, we are contributing towards the cost of EVs, as we've seen with Ford and other automobile makers losing billions of dollars. Shareholders and people that buy internal combustion engines are paying those costs.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, Jason, as a taxpayer, I don't mind contributing to technology that actually does good and not in the Democrat frame of operating, which in the past has been, as John said, putting the cart before the horse. Actual technology. What I don't want to do is to send my tax dollars to people who are spending $125,000 on a luxury EV and they are getting the rebate. Now, in this Illinois study, that was something else that was found, that there were a number of people who were purchasing these exorbitant luxury EV cars and still getting the rebate. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that your everyday American wants to be subsidizing that.
You didn't see AOC's dress that said subsidize the rich? Because that's exactly what's happening.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. It's unbelievable. The reality that Democrats are going to trying to reduce carbon no matter what. Whenever they get in power, they're going to do it. There seems to be more economical way. Even if you don't believe we have to do it, the reality is someone's going to try to do it. But wouldn't clean coal, natural gas, and nuclear energy reduce the carbon footprint at a fraction of Joe Biden's costs in quicker and more common sense, so that we, the electric ratepayers, aren't shelling out so much more money? It seems as though even if you are going to do it, there's a much easier way to do this, right?
No, they're absolutely true. And we've led the world in reducing carbon emissions here in the United States. Now, I live a high carbon lifestyle. I think the rest of the world should too. It's where you have economic prosperity and environmental leadership. You know, they're talking about eliminating this trace gas, CO2, carbon dioxide. It's 0.04% of our atmosphere and necessary for life on Earth. And I think that's the thing that the people on the left have a problem with, this life, this prosperity that we've been going through the last 100 years, because we've been using more hydrocarbons, we've been using more fossil fuels, and we utilize and produce those fossil fuels more responsibly than anywhere else on the planet right here in the United States. We need other countries to adopt our practices when it comes to pollution control and production of energy. We've reduced pollution nearly 80% over the last 5 decades. We're number one when it comes to access to clean and safe drinking water. And I think that this prosperity is what the left truly has a problem with. This is not about helping the environment. This is about control, because we've proven that we can already help the environment, and we have more than any other country. So I think the left is just about control. Decarbonization doesn't do anything to mitigate a changing climate. It just increases the cost of everything and makes life harder for everyone.
And Joe Biden has made us more reliant on dirtier energy sources like Venezuela, Russia, and other places, Iran. It's just amazing. You're right, Jason. Jason, we love having you on. You always give us common sense. You always give us facts. We always feel a little smarter when you're on. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us today. What a great conversation.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Amanda. Keep up the great work.
We will. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, Amanda and I are off to a quick commercial break, but when we come right back with a panel of guests on a very important conversation, it's going to surprise you a little bit. You're going to want to buckle your seatbelt. And then Amanda and I are going to get back. I want to get back to what Jason Foster talked about in the second segment, spying on Congress. There's a great understory I want to tell you as we round out the show. We'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. You might remember from earlier this year when the FBI came under scrutiny, well-deserved, after a leaked memo showed that the Bureau was warning that radical traditionalist Catholics pose an extremist threat to our nation. Well, our next guest is a pro-life activist who lived through a horrifying experience. Just last year, Mark Halka pleaded not guilty to the federal charges that FBI arrested him for in front of his kids, who were connected to an alleged altercation with an abortion escort outside a clinic in October of 2021. Now, while he was acquitted back in January, Mark and his wife have teamed up with Sean Carney, the founder of the 40 Days for Life organization, and are now actively suing the Department of Justice and seeking restitution for what they call a faulty investigation and excessive force after SWAT surrounded his family's home. Mark and Sean, it's great to have you here tonight. My goodness, what an incredible story you have, Mark. Could you just kind of lay the groundwork for everyone? What happened on that fateful day outside of that abortion clinic and what has transpired since then?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. On October 13th, 2021, my son and I were praying in front of Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia. It's something I've been doing for 20 years, and my son had been doing it the full year with me of 2021 when he proceeded to be badgered and harassed. And I just had to become dad on the sidewalk and help him out and protect him. And that led to a private criminal complaint, which was dismissed in the state court of Pennsylvania. It was quickly picked up by the DOJ 5 days later, and they served me with a target letter, which said I was a target of a federal grand jury investigation. Have your attorneys contact us right away. Attorneys contacted us, said, hey, no problem. We'll bring him to you if you want to indict him. There's case law even against indicting him, but he's a peaceful man. We'll bring him to you. Well, Dobbs is overturned in June, and September 23rd, I have the full force of the government at my door at 6:45 in the morning, September 23rd, with long guns and ballistic shields and helmets and battering rams ready to go, and to accost me and take me down to the federal building. And that began the journey towards a trial, which was January 24th this year, and ended in a full acquittal unanimous decision on January 30th. There's the recap.
Amazing story. Breathtaking. Sean, I want to ask a little bit about the state of religious freedom, because when you see what happens to Mark, when you see the Catholic memo, you start to realize that all the protections and the lines that we thought were bright lines in the U.S. government established by our Constitution 248 years ago, that they may be fraying under this new sort of mentality that's seeping into the government. Is this case that you and Mark are fighting, is this one of the epic free speech cases of our lifetime?
Absolutely. And it has nothing to do with what you think about abortion or whether you're conservative or liberal. This is about Americans, that the Constitution doesn't belong to Merrick Garland and the DOJ. It belongs to we the people. And our experience just with the pro-life movement and 40 Days for Life, we hold vigils outside of abortion facilities, and we've worked very well with the great men and women in the FBI and the DOJ, all the way going back to George W. Bush. But after the overturning of Roe, the DOJ had this newfound hatred and bigotry towards Catholic Americans and towards pro-life Americans. And Mark's case certainly represents that. The targeting of traditional Catholics represents that. And they're just out of control. It's absolutely out of control. And I think one of the great things about Mark's story and his family is that a lot of people just watch this and they kind of ran at their TV about the DOJ, but they can't really do anything about it. Mark can, and he is. And that is what is so helpful, because we have had so many volunteers targeted, not just Mark, over the last 18 months, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, and I look at this situation and I see Mark on the receiving end of the fist of the federal government. And I am so glad that he found you, Sean. But tell us about your organization, because I know that you it's not just this instance where you teamed up with him. Your organization, 40 Day for Life organization, does a lot of good work. Can you tell our audience about it?
Yeah, Mark's been a longtime volunteer since we started back in 2007. We hold peaceful vigils outside of abortion facility. We do so lawfully. We are law-abiding. We're peaceful. We've helped save over 24,000 babies. We've helped 254 abortion workers who have had a change of heart and left their job, and we've helped close over 150 abortion facilities, including the one where our headquarters is located now in Texas. And so it's a peaceful effort. It's an effective effort. It's volunteer-based with 1 million volunteers in 1,600 cities. And we use our free speech. We use our free speech. We do this for God and country. And we've had no issue until the last 18 months after the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Mark, I want to ask about the personal cost to you, not just the fact that you were humiliated in the arrest or you had your freedom infringed, but your family has endured a lot over the last couple of years. You've been on an extraordinary journey just because you wanted to express your religious beliefs and your free speech. Tell us a little bit about what has happened with your family. What has it been like to go through this 2.5-year journey?
Well, sure. And you have to know that my wife and I, we homeschool our kids. And for 15 years, we've been dedicating our lives to forming them and helping them have a safe environment which to grow and thrive. And all of that was taken away in an instant by the DOJ. And so what we're dealing with now is the fallout of what the trauma can do to a little person and even to big people. We all have PTSD. My kids have nightmares. My youngest came to me 2 nights ago and said, Dad, I had a nightmare that we all were killed. And so where does a 5-year-old get these ideas? People that come onto the property unannounced, a police officer being around them, near them, is going to trigger something. And it does. My wife had a panic attack when someone came onto the property who was unannounced. And so, we're dealing with that. It's really hard to understand and know what's all that's going on. Kids are resilient. But for my wife and I, we quantify what we could to make this initial brief effective. We will continue to pursue additional punitive damages as we go along here against the government. But, suffice it to say that the kids were terrorized, traumatized in every way imaginable that no human being and no American, for that matter, should have to deal with.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It is devastating to see. Mark, I want to wish you and your family all of the best, that you can heal from this process and get some kind of restitution. And Sean, we hope that more people find out about your organization and get involved. 1 million volunteers. That's incredible. Everybody check out 40daysforlife.com. John and I have to take a very quick commercial break. We've got an update from Capitol Hill coming up on the other side and a little bit more news to wrap up the day. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, America. A little bit of breaking news. We started the show off with a little discussion about the stopgap spending measure and whether it would pass the House, and it just did. Speaker Mike Johnson scores his very first big legislative victory by getting this passed. It averts a shutdown. And I had a funny feeling, Amanda, this was going to pass, because what he's done here is not just kick the stopgap and buy some time. He's set a course now to start shrinking government in the second half of the budget year with these spending bills. He's going to get them done. He's going to put the Senate on defense. And I think even though some conservatives voted against it today, they have some hope that what Speaker Johnson has set in motion will ultimately shrink the size of government before this budget year is out. And I think that's what's given him the goodwill to get this done tonight. Big moment. First, I think really the first major victory. And by the way, all the media were rooting against him. I guess they'll be eating crow in their headlines tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but at least that the folks up on Capitol Hill will be eating turkey next week, and I think that was probably the primary incentive for actually getting this done. Yeah, but congratulations to Speaker Johnson. Yeah, I hope that this sets a tone going forward as far as his success as Speaker. Time will tell. I think that his feet are to the fire by a number of some of the factions within his party, but that's how it is with any Speaker, and that's certainly how it was with Kevin McCarthy. Speaking of Kevin McCarthy, we've got a couple videos pertaining to that fight club that took place on Capitol Hill that we're going to show in just a few moments. But before we get to that, John, as we were talking with Jason Foster, and he obviously has a duty to protect Americans who come forward with allegations of fraud and abuse and corruption and things like that. And we were discussing some of the details of that. And I think for you, there was a moment of deja vu. Can you tell our audience about that?
Well, back in 2001, just before 9/11, I was the big story in Washington because it had been revealed that the Bush Justice Department had illegally taken my phone and mail records as a reporter. They were trying to find out who my sources were. It was a big outcry. And one of the things that we learned, the man who signed off on spying on my reporting was Bob Mueller. He was the Deputy Attorney General, and he had just been named the FBI Director. And Jason talked about the 6 years of delay that the Justice Department kept delaying. his required notification that he had been targeted. Well, Bob Mueller, we learned from the work I did at the Associated Press at the time, he delayed notifying me that my phone and mail records had been taken, even though the notification was due in the summer of 2001, until after his nomination hearing had gotten through and he had been confirmed as the FBI director. This way it wouldn't come up as a block to his confirmation, an early sign of the power of the deep state and the administrative state. But as Jason was talking about the 6 years of delaying his notification, it reminded me of, well, 22 years ago, what happened with Bob Mueller, the FBI, the Justice Department. Ultimately, the FBI apologized to me for what it did, but that took 2 years. So a little deja vu all over again.
Yeah, they meant that apology, I'm sure, because they've corrected their behavior. Okay,
Exactly.
So I know that the first rule of Fight Club is we're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, but I think that when Fight Club descends on Capitol Hill, we have to talk about it. So I want to show this video. I don't know, what is it, a full moon or something? I don't know. There was some extra spicy.
I've never seen anything like this.
This is incredible. Everybody check this out. This is Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett and, of course, the former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Watch this.
Well, I was doing an interview with Claudia from NPR, a lovely lady, and when she was asking me a question. And at that time, I got elbowed in the back, and it kind of caught me off guard because it was a clean shot to the kidneys. And I turned back, and there was Kevin. And I for a minute, I was kind of, what the heck just happened? And then I chased after him. Of course, he's as I've stated many times, he's a bully with $17 million in a security detail.
John, what do you think it looked like when he chased after Kevin McCarthy down the halls of Congress?
I literally don't know, but I got to tell you, it's kind of scary to see this sort of behavior in a place where, America has so many serious issues, right? We got these issues of Iran and the proxy war and Hamas and Israel and the war in Ukraine, and we're teetering towards insolvency in the United States. Moody's downgrading the country, and instead we got an MMA match breaking out on Capitol Hill. It's why so many people today consider the Capitol a marble asylum, because there's so much insanity that goes on there, and the people's business often doesn't get done. And if that wasn't scary enough, how about we watch the fight challenge between Mark Wayne Mullen and Teamsters boss Sean O'Brien? Take a look at this.
Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your
All right.
solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Actively.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
John, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen is not some flimsy senator. I mean, he's from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is not the type of guy to want to rumble with.
Sean
but I did
O'Brien's
find
lucky
it.
that the Senate chairman stepped in, because it might not have
I
ended
think you're
well.
right.
Yeah.
When you have to have Senator Mittens coming in and calling off the fight, then, you might be on the receiving end of a future butt whipping.
Who would have ever thought it? But you know what? I think it's time to bring MMA fighters on and start refereeing Congress. They can come in and be the color analyst for what's going on in Congress, because I mean, it's beyond politics now. It's crazy. It's quite amazing. It really is.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, when you have President Trump, when you have Madison Square Garden in the bluest of blue cities in a blue state, in New York City, when you have an entire arena erupt as President Trump walks into the building, I think that the lines between UFC, octagon fighting, and politics have clearly blurred too much that it is exploding.
Get me Dana White's number. It's time to get him on the show. That's all I can think of. I'll tell you that.
Pastime. Let's do it.
All right. Well, it's hard to believe that we ran out of time. Some breaking news, as you said. We'll keep you covered all night long on that big win for Speaker Johnson, Capitol Hill. But now it's time to turn the gavel to our good friend Grant Stinchfield. He'll take you through the next hour. God bless you. We'll be back tomorrow night, folks.